I've seen the specs on the trucks. I think
They're state bid.
I just think that we've overbought in the past. We don't need D10 stuff.
Yeah, no, this is a dump truck, so it hauls heavy loads, and diesel is the best match for that. For everyday driving, I could understand not having a V10, but this is for like when we have main breaks or whatever to haul the dirt and so forth. So.
I just want to let you.
Sure. Thanks. I guess I want to go ahead and, at this time, I'll go ahead and introduce Doug Brookhart with Jones and Henry to everybody. Doug, believe it or not, was the first utilities director at the City of Heath.
A long time ago.
A while ago. He's worked at Lima, I think, St. Mary's, Sydney's as their utilities director. And he's now working with Jones and Henry. He's a consultant for Jones and Henry. So when we get into the sewer backup policy, then Doug may, if you have any questions or anything for Doug, or he may interject some things that maybe I'm talking about or whatever. So, but I guess the question I want to ask you now is, would you rather me jump forward and knock out these other things first? Because I got a feeling we're going to have a lot of questions about the sewer policy. So I'm going to
just duck that line waiting.
Yeah,
That's fine.
Doug says fine. The only one that worries me a little bit is Dave. I don't
I'm
know.
all right. This is my last appointment for the day.
This is your last one. So, originally I intended on doing it very first, but then I got a funny feeling that we may get more questions, and I'd rather have the bunch of questions toward the end rather than at the beginning and then try to rush through everything else. So, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and move forward then.
Did you have this done when you were here?
No. We didn't even have radios, no Motorola or anything.
Okay, so we're going to be doing wastewater. We're going to go to number 2. We're going to talk about the jet aeration for the digester update. And I just kind of want to update you on what we're doing. Currently working on specifications to bid the installation of the jet aeration system in our digesters out. I'm evaluating 2 systems from Fluidyne Corporation and Mixing System Incorporated. The preliminary cost estimate's $108,000 for equipment, and preliminary installation cost would be about $56,000. That's over the bid limit, so that would have to be bid if we decide to do it. If you remember, this is something that I talked about, the improvements that needed to be done on the digesters down there for the aeration. We're trying to, I don't want you to get upset, Doug, but we're trying to do this ourselves rather than hiring an engineering firm. So it's relatively an easy fix. It's something that doesn't really have to be engineered to any certain specifications or anything. We're just replacing one type of aeration system for another. This is where I also told you about we can utilize a savings of about $10,000 per year on switching to this system, because we're only going to be using one blower rather than 2 blowers. So just to kind of bring you up to speed on the jet aeration, before we go forward on this, we'll talk more about it in the future, but this is something that we're working with. And these are the 2 companies that we're working with on their type of systems. So does anyone have any questions on the jet aeration system for the digesters? Okay. We'll go to the Fox Run station removal. This is where we're talking about actually doing away with a lift station and Fox Run and running a gravity sewer to another lift station. So we're going to be eliminating a lift station here in the City of Heath. The reason why we want to eliminate this lift station is because potential contamination of industrial waste entering a residential home area. We would see $1,000 electrical savings per year, $400 for generator service per year, $1,200 maintenance on the lift station, equipment and pumps per year, about $1,000 city man-hours checking this per year. We can utilize the generator in another location that doesn't have a generator in one of our just lift stations. So the cost is not, we're not just totally abandoning this lift station. We can utilize the pumps that are in the lift station at other lift station locations. And I guess the big kicker is if we do have more development in the industrial area, that lift station is going to be too small anyway, so it's going to have to be upgraded. So where we're going to gravitate this to would be a bigger lift station. They'll be able to handle more heavier loads than what the Fox Run lift station currently can handle. So that is why we're talking about possibly doing away with this Fox Run lift station. Does anyone have any specific questions about the Fox Run lift station? The preliminary engineering completed was
When are you
completed.
thinking of doing this?
Well, you know, it just depends on how things progress. I would like to try to do it first of next year possibly, or something like that. We already did the preliminary engineering. It was done by Jobs and Henderson, where they said yes, it can be gravity. So an engineering cost estimate to do away with that lift station is $300,000. I mentioned that last time. But what you got to remember is you're not going to have maintenance on that equipment anymore. And anytime you can do away with the lift station, you're better off. We're currently looking at the construction and design for this. I'll have to get with another engineering firm.
My question,
Yeah, go ahead.
300,000 just seems like an awful lot. What's a stick of dynamite cost? Huh?
Well,
I mean, I just,
that's running the sewer to the gravity. That'll be a gravity sewer,
Oh,
brand new
okay.
gravity sewer
Okay.
down an easement,
all right.
okay,
Yeah.
to the new lifts, to the other lift station.
Okay.
That's demoing out the old lift station, getting rid of it.
But not
These are engineers'
So
estimates.
it's removing and replacing.
Yes,
Okay.
it's running the line and everything. Okay.
John, refresh my memory.
Mhm.
Which fund would we be paying the cost of that out of?
Right, that would come out of the replacement fund that we have for the city of Heath. We have over, and I'll show you that later on, we have over $1,500,000 in that fund. That's used to make replacements on equipment. That's what we're looking at for the digester jet aeration to take out of that fund. And then also, I think it would be an excellent place to use this because we're actually replacing. We're going from a gravity to a pump station. So that is the fund that would be utilized for that. That was a fund that was originally set up, that the EPA made set up for just these type of incidences where we have to replace equipment.
We had that rate increase for improvements. That doesn't affect that. I mean, we're not taking away from that for other projects that you had the money set aside for. This is in the fund, like you said, that was developed for these kind of things. If we take the $100-some thousand out for the aerators, I think, and then we get another $300,000 here. I mean, does that fund recover pretty quickly? I don't know what are you still putting a certain percentage into that fund? Does it?
Yes, that fund, a certain percentage of the collection goes into that fund all the time.
Okay. So
I need to get you exact numbers, what goes in there a year, I don't know. But I do know that it seems to be building at a pretty frequent since I've been here.
So you don't see it basically being a situation that we've got 300 here, 150 on the aerators, and the next thing you know, we do a few more things. It's like, oh, we got to do something else, and I got to get in the general fund. That's not the case. This thing replenishes itself quick enough. We're okay.
Yeah, it seems
Okay.
fine.
That's
And a lot of cities who have had this fund have depleted this fund over the years. We have been very good about watching this fund, and only using it if it's necessary. I know when Mayor Wall was here, he made some phone calls because the fund was basically there. And we were like, well, what can we use it on? The city's never used it on anything. And when he touched base with other cities that had this fund, it was basically depleted in their cities. There was no money in there. So they didn't really have a fund like this. But we have been very cautious on what we use this for, and we only use it for things that are going to be a big advantage for us. Doing away with the lift station, I think, would be a good advantage. This better treatment on the digesters is going to be a good advantage. In fact, we actually get into phase 2. When we start replacing equipment, you're starting in the phase 2 of the overall study that we did at the wastewater plant on upgrades. We had phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1 was what we just completed, where we upgraded the front end of the wastewater plant. Phase 2 is replacing equipment that needs to be replaced that's been either in poor condition or needs upgraded or something like that. So
We didn't pull any money that, we paid for the water line, with the water line, that came out of capital improvements, didn't it?
that's correct.
Okay, all right.
That came
It
out
could-
of
it could have-
water. That came out of water capital improvements. This is wastewater.
Out of water, not, okay, water capital.
Water does not have a fund like this. I wish they did. But water does not have this fund.
When we did that rate study, which we then used as the structure for the ordinance on the water and wastewater rates moving forward. John, am I thinking correctly? I seem to recall that we actually lowered wastewater
We are.
rates, right?
Yes.
The water rates went up, wastewater rates went down slightly.
Kind of rebalanced everything.
Yeah.
We know that we were going to start making improvements in the water, and we knew that the wastewater funds were in pretty good condition. So we kind of balanced things out. Wastewater came down a little bit, and water charges went up. Any other questions on Fox Run? Okay, I just wanted to show these briefly. We just recently had the sludge taken out of the building down there. I don't know if you can see what that's like, but when we take solids, it's almost like a liquid, and then we press them. We get almost a material that looks like dirt, and we store it in this building, and then eventually it gets hauled away. And when we haul it, it goes into trucks, where then it's processed and goes out onto farmers' fields and so forth. It's a Class B sludge, but it's a very good Class B sludge. Also wanted to mention that we are we're getting ready to start chlorinating. Starting in May 1st, we will start chlorinating, because when we discharge to the rivers and so forth, we have to start chlorinating due to people coming in contact with more of the recreation and so forth. So this is our chlorine contact tank. As you can see, we hosed everything down real well, and they actually used that muriatic acid to get some of the algae and so forth off the sides of the tank. It's not quite completed. When it was done, it was totally white after they cleaned it, and then after we started painting the chlorine tank. So this was what we was working on last week.
Is that retention or detention?
It's detention.
Why do they call it detention?
Because what you're doing is you're giving more contact time for the chlorine to react as it flows through this channel. So as it flows through the channel, you're getting a longer contact time with your chlorine, so that any germs or bacteria or pathogens can be knocked down before it goes into the river. And then after we chlorinate, we have to dechlorinate. We can't pass chlorine into the rivers because it kills fish. So then we have to keep an eye on that. So after we chlorinate, then we use sodium bisulfite to dechlorinate, to take the chlorine out before it goes to the river. So we're killing the bacteria, and then we take the chlorine out before we discharge it into the river. So, but I wanted to show you that that's what we were doing last week. And then also we did have a sewer plug today which is mainly caused by grease. Some of you guys asked me why the truck was up at Bob Evans. I'm in the process of maybe talking to some of the restaurant owners up there. I don't know if they're not cleaning their grease separators out, which timely basis.
Truck that was out in the field.
Yeah, that's where it ultimately ends up.
Oh, okay.
Those 3 restaurants discharge across to Applebee's through that field there, actually in the airport field.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to track it down, and when we tracked it down, it ended up being out in the middle of the runway where we had an easement through there, believe it or not. I don't know whatever happened for working in the plane company. But,
I'd move.
yeah, we probably shouldn't move, I guess, I don't know, but, so we tracked it down, found out where the water was flowing, and then we jetted that, and right before I came here, Lee McCown said that, and I think Nick's working on that too, about 3 or 4 guys working on that. That's probably why Nick isn't here. But anyway, they broke that plug loose. So they said they had to do some cleanup work, and they said they'll probably do that tomorrow. Okay, we're going to move on to water. Got great news. I'm allowed to talk about it now, but the Ohio Public Works Commission, with our improvements on Franklin Avenue, where we're replacing the water line and putting in the new pump station, it's official, we got a $250,000 grant, and $295,380 and 0% interest loan for that project. That's $1 million project, so half of that project, we have some kind of help with that. So we're moving onward.
The other half is from the bonds from the 79 debt refinance, and then we rolled in Franklin Avenue. I just signed those today, so that should be wrapped up also.
Yeah.
So we should have 100% of the money that at this point we think we need for that project.
You know, I want to remind everybody what this was about, and what this is about is we've had a lot of growth on the residential side, on the east side. We had a lot of new housing additions go in. We had Woodlands and Willow Ridge and Blackfoot Trail and Linview addition, and we had a lot more consumption on that side of town, and we only have 1 feed to the east side. And Doug can tell you a lot of stories about this, but if you want to interject, he's more welcome at the time. But what we're doing is we're putting in a new pump station there. We're going to have the ability to rechlorinate this pump station, so we can actually add a little bit of additional chlorine to the east side, which we seem to have a little depletion of when the water travels from the water plant over to the east side. So what we're going to do is we'll have a dual, almost a three-way feed to the east side to the WCLT tank, which feeds the whole east side of Heath. And the problem is, when I first became utilities director, we had a water main break on Franklin Avenue on the south side. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and John and them, they're out there working, trying to get the daggone thing fixed. And I said, man, slow down a little bit. Because we can't slow down. This is the only feed to the east side. We're losing the water over there. And I'm saying, what? It's the only feed to the east side. So then things have kind of progressed from then, and now hopefully we can get this dual feed. And if we do have a problem like that again that occurs on Franklin Avenue with a main break, we don't have to worry about, are we going to run out of water on the east side? So that's going to solve that problem by have a dual feed to that side.
I mentioned
Did you want to talk
earlier,
about the old system, Doug?
Recently, I think the community lost Boyd Black.
Yes.
Remember Boyd? We lost that water line going up the hill across from your little pump station. That's the only way to put water to WCLT or the whole east side. Now, there wasn't any Forest Hills and all these other subdivisions, so there wasn't a lot of use. But Boyd, in his wisdom, made us slings, and we put a cable across down there at that lift station, and we put a 2-inch galvanized pipe through those slings and got it to the other side of the river. And we fed that east side for months with a 2-inch wire line.
Actually, the water line, it used to be, you used to be able to see that cable. It was
Yeah,
there for
going
years and
across
years.
the
Yeah.
South Fork.
Yeah, what
Yeah,
it
that's-
does is that fed the whole east side at that time.
That 2-inch galvanized line.
That's been since taken out of service.
Yeah.
We, I mentioned earlier the rate study, and just so that you guys understand, when we did that rate study and we tried to project the projects that we were looking at down the road that were going to be financed, we expect how much did we put in the rate study for this one, John? I can't remember.
Originally 400,000.
Yeah. At 5% for the interest rate. So even though the money needed for the project is much more than that, a quarter of it is grant, which means we don't have to repay. Another quarter plus of that is at 0%. And the other half is, I want to say it works out somewhere between 2.25 maybe, something like that on that bond sale that we just did. So I think the total cost to the city for the financing of this is going to be less than what we had anticipated in that rate study, which is good. That's what we wanted to do, try to be conservative in our estimates.
We'll go ahead and, any other questions on what else? Okay, we'll go ahead and go into, let's see, while we're in the water. Recently, we had, I think it was an audit, Mayor, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we had an audit or something, and they came to Linda Boyles, and I'll read to you. We recommended the city establish a policy governing the review of non-cash adjustments made to customer accounts by city personnel, expanded beyond the city's high water usage adjustment policy.
Yeah, I think that was part of just the annual, audit review.
Yeah, this will help ensure the adjustments to customer accounts are valid and for proper purpose. So what we're doing is, and everyone should have a copy of this, but late fees are this is stuff that we already do, but we just don't have it in a policy. And they came to them and wanted to see the policy. So what we're going to do is, I'm just going to mention it to you guys. The mayor's probably going to sign it as a policy, and then it'll become a policy. But this is normal transactions, but I wanted you to be aware that it will be put into a policy. Late fees are removed from accounts when paid at Park National Bank on the due date. Invoices returned to the city in air by postal service. Payments is received after due date and had been damaged by the postal service. The other policy is pool fills. Sewer charges are adjusted based on either normal consumption or meter readings taken before and after filling by residents. Now, and that's done one time a year. What you can do is you can call in to Linda, tell her that you're filling your swimming pool, take a reading, tell her when you're done filling your swimming pool. And Brian, have you done this?
Oh, every year.
Yeah. So that wasn't in a policy. And then what they do is they just charge you for the water.
I did not do that one year, and I.
And you remember the next year.
My wife didn't let me forget. And that was just, it was only about half down too, It's winter, and I said, whoa.
So when you have to pay sewer on the bill, it becomes a whole different animal. If you're just paying water or something, that's enough. Davis Shea House and City Pool Complex accounts, bills adjusted per mayor's directive. There's an adjustment for those two facilities on water and sewer. Fee charged for having
Basically what we do is we pay the at cost rate right now.
That's what it costs us to produce at those two facilities. Fee charged for having service shut off due to non-payment. The fee is removed if the owner ultimately pays tenant's final bill and has requested the adjustment. So that's in a case of where you have a tenant paying his bill, but no matter what, whether the tenant's paying his bill or not, the owner is ultimately responsible for the bill no matter what. So, and in cases and questions are referred to the utilities director. So that's that. I want to talk a little bit about the major funds. Wastewater operating fund, $1,190,000. I won't go into this, but if you look at the wastewater replacement fund, that's the fund that we were talking about earlier. The water operating fund, what that's cut in, and the water capital improvement funds. So that's our major funds. And does anyone have any other questions? Hopefully this comes back up on that portion. Okay. Good. We're going to get into the wastewater sewer backup policy. Again, I introduced Doug, and I asked Dave to set in on this too, because last time we had a discussion, I know there was a lot of questions and legal questions and so forth. So Dave's here to answer any questions on that. Also, Doug's here to kind of interject on maybe policies that are being used maybe in other cities. Maybe give us some hints on maybe how we can do a policy and so forth. But this kind of described, and Doug and I had talked about this, where South Bend and Elkhart, Indiana, actually had a sewer lateral insurance policy at those two locations. And this program consists of additional charge placed on residential bills, which is used to pay a city-approved contractor to replace water services and sewer laterals when they fail. The homeowner under this coverage does not need to lose sleep over worrying about his service lines failing and encountering a large cost to replace those essential utilities. The lateral and service line insurance is actuarially calculated based upon the city's experience with water services and sewer lateral repairs required over the years. And this is stuff that we talked about last month. But I wanted to bring it up again.
And one of the questions that I have before we get started is when we discussed this and then followed up and David was concerned about the city doing anything, and I guess I would like to know his opinion on this.
Well, on buying insurance like they're doing there?
Well,
or-
no, this is kind of an introduction of what some other communities do. That's not what I'm proposing right now, is for us to actually have an insurance policy, but or anything like that. I'm just kind of showing you what other communities and other areas do. And then what I kind of want to really focus on a little bit is Sydney's proposal. I talked with Steve Stillwell over at Granville, which is thinking about implementing something very similar to what Sydney has in their policy. And I'm not saying we have to do this policy exactly the way Sydney's is. I'm not saying we have to do it how Elkhart does it or any other, but I think we need to have some kind of a policy to protect the citizens and to, as I get into this a little bit more, I'll explain why. But
David, I think Dick's question goes to something maybe that you had shared with us, that the city should not appropriate any money at all unless it was on a case-by-case approval by city council. Is that right, Dick? Is that
Yeah,
what you-
just for a week.
Okay. All right.
Well, the main thing is the city can't just give away money. That if you don't have a legal liability, then you can't pay people unless, with the exception of the moral obligation that we got into a couple months ago. That's one thing. The other is, if one of the ideas was to allow customers to opt in or opt out of a plan and then charge them what is in effect a premium on their bill to opt in, and then use the money, what the original idea a year or two ago was to set up a separate fund to pay, to reimburse people for damages. That is pretty much the definition of insurance, whether you want to call it insurance or not. What we're talking about now is a different thing altogether. At least the policy that we're looking at. You don't opt in or opt out. And we're not giving the money away because we're declaring that this is for the health and safety of the residents of Heath, because we're encouraging people and helping to pay for cleaning up raw sewage, which is certainly a health problem if ever there was one. So the idea that John has come up with, or from Sydney and possibly from Granville doing something similar, they've avoided both of those problems, the giving money away part and creating basically becoming an insurance company. We could do that, but we have to comply with all the insurance requirements to do that. Like we're self-funding for healthcare now. It's possible, but we just, if we wanted to do it that way, it would be expensive and complicated. And as I'm sure many of you remember, when you decided to become self-funded for the health insurance.
So Dave, we could not set aside money as an emergency for a backup. We can't do that, or you can.
Well, you can set aside money.
In other words, if it was in his budget, a certain amount, say an average of what happened in the last 5 years, we take an average and say it was, I don't know.
Let me give you that average.
Do you have it,
Oh,
John?
yeah. In the last 4 years, including our big one that we did this year, that really kind of offsets everything. It's $4,000 a year. It's $3,900 is what we've paid for cleanup. But if you take that big one out of the equation, it was only a little over 1,000.
So we could do something like that, maybe set up a fund that would say that, we only have 2 or 3 of them a year, or maybe 1 a year.
Yeah, I don't know if you
Pay for
even
that,
need
or-
to set up a fund, but you could, because this sounds like a rounding error compared to your budget. I mean, it's just, you have that much variation from one year to the next with or without this kind of thing. So,
Man, go ahead.
I just had a question about if someone does have sewer backup coverage on their insurance and we step in and pay, then does the insurance come back in and pay and then we get our money back? Or, because I know there was a timing issue that if we wait for our insurance company to determine liability, I'm assuming it's the same with theirs, that it's gonna take time and you're gonna have to start the cleanup. So what happens in that scenario?
I'll be quite honest with that, I don't know for sure. I don't know if their insurance company would reimburse us. What I'm guessing is no. They probably would not. I have never ran into any backups so far where the people have insurance. I mean, now I'm sure so I haven't ran across that. But my
Brian
guess.
must not dump grease down his drain.
Yeah, my guess is the insurance company's not gonna do anything. If they can get someone else to pay it.
I've had a water backup, and it was covered, but it wasn't a sewer backup. But my water backup would cover sewage, so even if this was available from the city, one would think, well, why would one pay for it if the city is gonna provide the same thing? Because there's other types of backups. It's just not sewer backups.
Right.
It could be groundwater backup. I mean, if groundwater comes to your house, people want to say it's a flood. That's not a flood. The water backed up into your house. If it comes through your windows or over your sill plates, then it became a flood. So I learned the hard way, so that's why I have water backup on my policy. And
Plus, we're gonna set a limit.
Sure.
I mean, all this
Yeah.
is,
1 in the morning, you can help somebody up.
yeah. I mean, I could say, hey, here's $1,000 for cleanup. We had a plug. It came from our system into yours. It wasn't caused by your lateral, but it was caused from our public system into yours. Then I can at least offer something, okay? And there, we would set a limit on that. That's determined by what we work up, whatever we decide. Do we want to make it $500? $500 isn't much, but do we want to make it 1,000? Do we want to make it 1,500? Or would you like to just make it a general so much to cover? But that's something that needs to be worked out, how we would approach this. We don't want to become too extravagant, but yet we want to be able to offer some help.
and I assume you want to do it right away. You don't want to wait till we submit it to our insurance and find out months later
Well,
whether
that was discussion last month.
That's correct.
But I also understood
Anything
that
we
what
can
we were
do-
looking at was if it backed up into somebody's basement and it was not our fault, we were giving it.
I called the EPA on that, and that's a little bit further on in the discussion, but it's not reported unless it comes from a municipal supply. Like if they just have roots that grow in their lateral and they run water on themselves and it backs up in, that does not have to be reported, or whatever. But if it comes from our main into theirs, then that has to be reported to the EPA.
Okay.
I had shared with John that the South Bend, the Elkhart, and I know those pretty well. Just, I think to show you what's the changes that have occurred in the last 40, 50 years in our business. And I'll share just a little history with you. We used to tell people when it backed up in their house that it was an act of God. I did that many times. And then there was a time when there were just 2 feet of sewage in a little old lady's basement. And I said, it's an act of God. And she said, mister, I go to church every Sunday and God's never treated me like that. I quit saying it's an act of God. It is a terrible experience if you go through it. It's terrible. But it's changed. You don't. The next thing we did was we went out and we started picking up. You tell the resident, we'll come with a dump truck and we'll pick up anything that was wet, damaged, whatever, hauled away. People loved it. They were satisfied with that. Hey, they come and picked up the old rug and the couch and all this stuff that was messed up in the basement. Times have changed. And now you have a health interest. You have mold, mildew. That's much more in the public eye. And, well, you know, people are saying, hey, I can't. This is somebody else's sewage in here, too. It's not just mine. I want this cleaned up, and it's tragic. So people around the country, wastewater systems, sewer collection systems, are starting to help. They're saying, well, we'll have somebody come in and clean up, and that's what you've been doing. And add to that, EPA's put pressure on. The city has an NPDES permit that says you're not supposed to put a diversion of wastewater over into a basement. It's an SSO, and an SSO is prohibited under your permit.
This is our permit, and I'll just read a little excerpt from it here, but this is a permit by the EPA, what they require us to do. The permittee shall maintain in good working order and operate as efficiently as possible the treatment works and sewage system as defined in a certain article. Achieve compliance with these terms and conditions of this permit and to prevent discharge to the waters of the state, surface, the ground, basements, homes, and buildings, etc. So that's what they're telling you right there is, you know, you got to keep your system in as good a condition as you can. And that's where we discussed last week about CMOM and how we thought, you know, it's the maintenance of the sewer system and how coming down the road, we're going to see more restrictions on and things on how we're maintaining our systems in the future. It's not here yet, but they're leaning, everything that's in here, correct, Doug, is leaning towards that.
What EPA, the CMOM guy was held up. There's a lot of controversy about it. And so what they've done is new permits every 5 years are issued. They're feeding CMOM over into your permit. That didn't used to talk in that detail about sewer collection, and now it does. And they fed it in there.
So it's kind of like being introduced.
Yeah. But from the sewer line to the house, that's not ours, right? That's the
We
whole
brought
line.
that. You can hold that. Bring that up a little closer there when we talk about it.
Doug actually brought this. And
I didn't know he was so up to date with his PowerPoint. I could have put that on a PowerPoint. Typical house, 4-inch sewer lateral. Some of them have a clean out just outside. That's handy. It's nice to have. I know communities that require that. You have to put a clean out up there at the house. Some have downspouts. I put those in red because if you start helping somebody clean up a mess, you're going to say, well, with that, we're going to check and make sure you don't have any downspouts or any illegal clean water connections, or you got to take those off while we're helping you out on this other deal. 4-inch sewer goes out to the main. I showed a couple manholes, but John, downstream, there's where you have a stoppage, where maybe it says city there. Somewhere in there, you have a stoppage. That's the main sewer. You got 20, 30 houses on that. It's coming, that flow's coming down that sewer. It's blocked off. The first house or the lowest basement is going to get the wastewater. A lot of times, somebody didn't have a basement, so they're not going to even know it happened. But 2 houses up, the lowest basement is going to go in there. Could go in there 6 inches, 2 feet.
Yeah. But our question last month was not with the out here, not pointing to your something, but between the sewer line and the house plugs up.
Just mine.
Yes.
That's right.
That's not our responsibility.
Nor would we pay for
Nor
something.
would we pay for that. And that's kind of,
And
and
the
they
way
spell
we
that
would-
out.
And the way that we would check that is we know where the
We check the
we
flow
know
out
where
here.
the plug is.
or where the problem is. We then go
We get these,
downstream, for lack of a better term, open up a manhole, and we can work our way up and see or we can just look down there and see, is the water flowing through there? And if it's flowing through there, then we know the plug's not in the main line. The plug must be in their lateral.
we get these calls every day.
Well,
Okay,
that's
I mean,
where-
every day,
that's
we'll
where
come
I thought
out.
Everybody was getting all
Here's my
upset last
What
month
I think you're
was-
talking about, Dick, and we'll get into this a little bit more. But what I think you're talking about is if you have a failure in this lateral right here in the street, right now, and we check this and we're flowing real good here, but this gentleman right here, he had the company come in and they ran a camera, and right here they have a major problem in their lateral.
It's
Right
broken
here.
down. It's broken down.
It's broken down in the street. Right now, it's the homeowner's responsibility from here to the main,
to the tap.
Yep. Now that's another situation that, maybe this fund might be used to help out someone who
I had
has
to pay for it.
Yeah.
I had to run from the house out, put the clean out and everything else.
Did you have to make the repair clear out in the right of way?
I
In that,
clear,
In the
clear
street?
out to the city.
this wouldn't concern us. What would concern us is if you start getting into our street.
Was he in the street, Dick?
No.
Mine goes out the back and there's,
Okay.
What we're kind of suggesting is it doesn't happen very often. I don't know that I've ever seen it, but it's, as Doug explained, as your systems start getting older, and we're approaching the 50-year mark on our sewer system, you're going to see more breakdowns, and possibly in the street. So we have to be aware of that. And if a homeowner all of a sudden decides that he has to dig the middle of the street up to make a repair so his sewage goes out, are we going to just say tough luck,
your policy right now.
I'm looking, in my mind, I was going out the back of the house.
Right. And a lot of the places in Heath are that way. The sewer runs in the backyard. There's a lot of places, but there's places, Conway Drive is in the middle of the road. I can't tell you, but there are several locations. The more and more you think about it, Doug might even remember more on different locations.
Heath was one of the newer sewer systems put in back just 1960s, early 60s. So they tried to put as many in the backyards and through the right of ways and keep it out of the highways. But you have some main sewers under the street, and it's another shock. It's as big a shock as having the backup. If you find out that's your responsibility, clear to that main. The main is clear, it's working, and John tells them 3 feet out from there on your own lateral, you got to dig down in Fieldson Drive. You got to go 10 feet deep and curb to curb and replace the curb and the walk and right away. You got to replace the blacktop back to original, and that's your cost. I've seen them $20,000. So I just mentioned to John, while you're talking about picking up some of the cost of cleanup, you might they can be two separate. You don't have to look at it together if you didn't want to, but you will face that someday. And a person will come in here to the council and say, I've got to go in the middle of the street out there and it's going to cost me $20,000. Why am I out in your right of way? I'll fix my lateral, but why am I out there in the street? You'll have some of those someday.
Now, but I think it's important to understand. You got 2 utilities, right? You got water service and you got wastewater service. Water service is handled differently, but there's a very clear reason for that. In the street or beside the street, you have your water main. Then you have a tap made on that main, and you have a line that runs toward the property. And then usually at the right-of-way line, close to it, you have basically it's a shutoff valve. If somebody doesn't pay their water bill, in the ground, and there's a box, a tube that goes down to it, we can take a wrench and turn that, and that shuts that house off from water. The property owner is responsible from their house to that stop.
That's right.
The city is responsible from the stop to the main. okay? Now, that's a little bit different scenario because when you're talking wastewater line, there is no stop box, okay?
That's
It
good.
goes from the house straight to the main. When these are installed, John, if you're putting in an addition, okay? Let's do River Oaks, okay? Is the builder is responsible for running the lateral from the property, wherever the house is gonna be, to and connecting to the main, right? Okay.
Let me
Which
tell you,
probably is.
I will tell you this, they do lay a stub out. Like if they're putting in a main sewer line, a lot of times they'll run a sewer line and they'll stub out so far, okay?
Okay.
But the way you look at it, the way the city looks at it, unless you want to change the ordinances somewhat, or change what's been done in the past, but even though they lay that stub out and they connect to it, you're still responsible from your house to the main. And if you talk to John,
includes the stub, too.
yeah, that includes the stub. And if you talk to John Groff, that's what he's going to tell you, because I've talked to him 3 or 4 times about it. That's the way the city has done it for years and years. And it doesn't specifically spell it out anywhere. You know, I've looked in our ordinances and stuff. I don't really see it spelled out, but that's what has been told to citizens forever, that they're responsible to the main. So whatever happens, we just want you to be aware that this
We,
is a
the
possibility.
citizen, are responsible out to that, where the shut-off valve.
No, there's no shut off.
On the water,
On the water. On the water.
yes,
Yes.
And sewer, we're responsible out to this main sewer line.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's what I got.
and you're right, there's no shut off, the right of way would be the divider line, and you'd have to determine which side of that right of way was broken down. Many subdivisions, they drop the Ys off, they run the lateral across, that's a part of the developer's job, but then he gives that to the city. And then when a builder buys a lot and builds a house, they come out and connect to that. There's a Y pole left there, they put a pole down in the ground so you know right where that is, and then there's a measurement kept here at the city hall.
Okay.
And it's always in the past, in most cities, been city does not repair that lateral to the main. And it's a catastrophic repair sometimes.
John, that, the big one that you talked about over on Nadine, the 13,000 we paid. Just, I mean, I want to touch on this. Have you said anything to her about putting in a backflow preventer?
I
She-
sent her a letter
you know if you're gonna
recommending
do
that, well, I can't make them do it, but that can be something that can be, that is something that can be put in this policy. If you make a payment like that to someone for a problem, if you have a reoccurrence,
That's what I was saying.
they have to be made. That's something that can be
That's
interjected
required
in this policy.
afterwards. If they collect from us, they're required to put a
Then
backflow
you can make
preventer.
them put in a backflow preventer.
Can we do that?
The backflow doesn't
Can we
work.
do that?
Yeah, if it's part of the deal, if you
That's
say,
what I'm saying.
yeah,
If we're gonna
we
give
can
you
put
money
all
to
the
clean up,
conditions on that payment we want.
then let's put a backflow preventer so we don't have to pay you any
What
more
happens
money
if
again.
backflow, they have to be
Preventer
maintained.
doesn't work.
They also have to sign that we don't maintain it, that they are responsible for the maintenance. We'll put it in for them, but they have to maintain it. And that would be like a waiver or something that would be added that they would have to sign. And if we do put this in for them, or if we make a payment to help them put it in, or however we want to set it up. I mean, we're just talking about this stuff right now, but
Sydney put in a condition that if anybody who's running downspouts or footer drains into the sanitary sewer has to cut those out too. That's also a condition of getting the money.
if they agree to get this money, then they get it. Now, Sydney has a lot more problems with I assume, than what we do. I mean, we don't.
It's 100-year-old system.
Yeah, it's a 100-year-old system.
What's
So
I&I?
they used to run infiltration from like
A downspout
downspouts.
or a sump pump.
I've never heard of anybody running their drains water into the sewer before, except the sanitary or
They will.
the storm sewer.
Yes, it's done a lot.
That's
I know you're saying that it's always been done that way. I love that line. But is that the way it should be? Do we really want homeowners out in this, I mean, in the right of way?
That's what this discussion's about.
Yeah, I mean, well, shouldn't, I would think you should change and go to the right of way. I mean, when our new road come through, they took everything to the right of way.
But you know, here's the problem. The property owner could be the one doing something, causing the blockage on the city's side of the right-of-way. It could be a tree that property owner owns, that's on their property, that's roots have infiltrated on our side of the right-of-way. It could have been that they flushed something that they shouldn't have, and it just happened to get stuck on our side of the right-of-way. We are able, and we do, clean the sewer main lines. We cannot clean every lateral that connects to the sewer line.
That's why I
So
think that was
we-
done, because of the extra expense that would be involved. Wouldn't you say, Doug? I mean, if you start saying that you're responsible for this to the
Right away.
right of way, wouldn't that give us responsibility of that now? And we can't no longer go out and check and say, oh, we're flowing fine, because we really don't know for sure.
I mean, remember how
You know what I'm saying?
Remember how John showed us the pictures of the sewer lines and the root balls that were in them, and then we did that foam thing, and it killed off those root balls. Okay. If the city were to be responsible from the right of way on the sewer lines, now that would, if we wanted to check ourselves, that means we would have to go up every lateral in there and make sure that there aren't any roots, and if there are, deal with them. I mean, that's about an impossibility. Is that right, John?
Very hard. You would have to
So the
camera.
city would end up being responsible for something that it can't really maintenance.
But most of the cities that have picked up the repair of a broken lateral do not clean the lateral. That's still the property owner's clear to the main. They get the Roto-Rooter out there and they have to clean it clear to the main. If they determine it's broken, it's full of mud, it's broken down, and there's no way you're gonna Roto-Rooter it out, then in the right-of-way part, many cities now take care of repairing that. I think that was your question is,
absolutely.
then the resident doesn't hire somebody to go out on the road, the city does.
And you're also saying that most of heat is in the backyard. I mean, I know I'm in the
Biggest
street,
majority of
but
them, aren't they?
in the right of way, but
I think ultimately you could write it so, you can take care of the legal aspect that we're not taking responsibility for your lateral, not even your stub. But if there happens to be a break that's under the asphalt within our right of way, then we would assist in the repair of that, but we're not liable for maintaining it. I would think that that's something that we
Yeah.
Maintenance
Maybe
is
I'm
still theirs, but if you
Yeah, the
would have a,
legalese part of
be
it
more
needs to be-
specific.
I
Yeah,
think that would be much better.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I wouldn't think a plug from the main would go up somebody's lateral either. So if there's a plug in the lateral, it probably came from the house, right? Not the other way around.
Right. Yeah, we just don't want them digging in our streets.
Sure.
But a lateral can break down. They're clay pipe,
Oh, yeah.
they can just break down and then the dirt comes in and it's done. You've got to excavate it to fix it.
Yeah, but
And that can happen under the right of way around.
So I think we have to stay specific that yes, you're still responsible to the main for maintenance. But if you would have a major failure, a lateral breakdown, like Doug said, then in the road, then maybe we might have to suffice with it.
my concern about, I'm not on the sewer, I'm on the septic system, and I can count on once every 2, maybe 3 years, I gotta get Roto-Rooter out there because of the trees where my lateral is going underneath those trees, and those roots just get in there and they plug it up. So I know that I'm gonna have to have it dug out, clear to the septic tank out there. So I just know that that's, the tree roots is gonna be a problem with some people.
So this may be
Then
something
that
else that
would-
we want to put in this policy too, that maybe you know, in this certain instance, that we might have to maybe help cover the costs on something like that.
You make your notes on this, you write your policy.
Yeah.
Really, that's, you know, the legal
But I think
part
you
of
worked
it
that
is
out,
just
that's a
the-
reasonable approach.
Worded right to, you know, and it's my belief, John, that I think that we should set aside something out of your budget or something, and that's my feeling on it.
I think what we gotta do is we gotta sit down, I need to put together a policy of what we've kind of talked about in here. We need to have Dave review it and then bring it back and say, okay, this is kind of what we're suggesting. Okay, let me know what you guys think. What do you think about payout per, I mean, do you feel that $1,000 is sufficient? Do you want to, I mean,
I think it is.
what,
You said the average payout per year is $4,000. How have you paid out that $4,000 if you don't have a policy? Currently, or how do you decide to help somebody with it? How much have you paid out currently?
basically, it happened in the previous administration before Mark. When I met with Richard, we had a couple of these instances where something like this happened. And we talked about this. If you go back through, we have a policy that was written up, but it never got signed by the mayor. But it's very similar to what we're talking about right now. The limit was $3,000 per incident on this policy. Okay, and I can show it to you. I think I might have sent it to everybody. But it was one of those, but we talked about it, and I got it probably somewhere. But it never got, I thought that it got put into a policy and was carried forward. And I followed those rules. And what happened was, if we had a backup, the mayor said, just let me know where it's at, how much it is, and take care of it. And we talked to council about it. We went through these discussions and everything. And that's what I did. So, so we kind of carried through with that, and we did that. Well, you see how often I did it over the years. It averages about, if you throw this big one out that we had this year, it was only a little over $1,000 for each incident. You know.
You mean each year?
Each year, yeah. Each year was only a little over $1,000 until we hit this one. And that's why we're discussing this now. But anyway, so yeah, we need to, if we do come up with this policy, go ahead.
My question is for the law director on this. If we have insurance now through our insurance carrier, where if the backup was caused by the main being clogged, and don't we have $1,000 deductible or something on that?
I haven't seen that policy, so that
Okay.
insurance policy, so I don't know.
Okay. I guess I've always assumed, it seemed like on everything else we have, it's always $1,000 when we went to the insurance on anything. It always seemed like it was, we paid the first 1,000 insurance. If
For
it was-
Tim, let me show you this. This, you know, we, on that backup that we were talking about where we had the problem. Okay, the lady actually went ahead and put in a claim to our insurance company.
Okay.
For replacement. She wanted everything replaced.
Okay.
Or money, after we said that we were gonna pay. In the letter I got back from the insurance company, this is what was stated. In order for a municipality entity to be liable, they must have notice of a problem in the sewer line. In other words, they have to have notice of it for a while, sewer line, and a reasonable amount of time to correct it. Therefore, based on this information, we must respectfully inform you that your claim for property damage is denied, as this was a sudden and unexpected blockage in the sanitary sewer main. So what they're saying is, and it's going to come up every time, that when you turn this into, you tell them to go to the insurance company. That's exactly what's going to happen.
That's what I think we should do. That's what I'm saying. I don't see as why we, as a city or taxpayers, are paying for someone else's blockage if it's not
The taxpayers are paying to. It's their system.
I know, but if the system isn't
the
at
system
fault,
belongs to the taxpayers.
Okay.
You're just overlooking it. You're residing over it.
okay, and that's what I'm saying is if Doug's got insurance, okay, not Doug, I'm pointing to Brian. If Brian, because Doug's not even on the sewer. If Brian's got insurance, okay, if I have insurance at my house that pays for this, okay, all right, on my policy, I pay premiums, so I'm covered, okay. and there's a blockage, and I get sewage in there, I call my insurance agent or whatever, I pay, I pump it out, everything. Doesn't cost any of you people else that's on the system any amount of money. Okay? What you're saying is, don't get insurance, don't have any policy like that. If you have a problem, don't worry. The other people that's paying into the system are going to pay for your problem. And that's exactly what you're saying.
There's no way we can pay for the whole problem, though, Tim. We can't pay for the whole problem. This is kind of like I'm going to tell you right now, this limit that you guys are setting right here is not going to pay for the whole problem.
Okay.
What it does is it causes things to happen more quickly. Like, let's say these people need to get this cleaned up, and you start having health effects from it. Or, because it came from our sewer system, our municipal sewer system, and backed up into these people's houses, we have to be able to react as soon as possible to try to get this thing cleaned up. So if we make an offer to these people, or they come back later and say, hey, I'm sick, or my kid's sick, or whatever, you're offering some kind of help. Doug, do you have any more?
Well, the health issue has become another factor, just like the NPDS permit and the awareness of people to come up. They're going to come to council and say, I had $600 worth of cleaning. I got mold. I got mildew. My kids are sick. And they're going to ask for some assistance. The health issue is important. There's more awareness of mildew and mold and some of the problems that it causes. So you want to get in there and clean it up.
And if you had a situation where you had a finished basement, where maybe you had some drywall that was damaged by sewer backup, the removal and the replacement of that, the dollar amounts that we're talking about in this, that would not cover the kind of things that we're talking
It's my understanding the professional cleaners do come in, and if it's gone up the wall and the water was either up that high or it'll suck it right up the wall, they'll cut that bottom portion off and clean it so that the mold mildew is handled. They're not going to put the paneling back on. You can get into, I've seen some, I call them catastrophic, beautiful finished basements, probably $30,000, $40,000 worth of replacement. That person's going to come and sue the city and the insurance company. They're going to come, and you can say you're not legal or liable, and that various reasons you're not going to do it. But they've got, if they get somebody that's got access to the permit and all, and you should have been taking care of it, maybe they'd win, and maybe they not, but they could, right?
I don't think there should be a worry to us whether I have a shack or whether I have a mansion. It's my responsibility to have insurance on my property, and I don't think the city should assume any liability if it's my fault. And I don't, because
if it's your fault,
if it's our fault,
the city's fault.
Yeah, but we can't afford. You open that up. I've been on council long enough to know if you put something like this in, we'll be busted in a year, or David will resign because he'll be in lawsuits all the time. I'm like Tim. I don't go for this.
Cletus, let me ask you a question now. I think there's fundamental thinking that I think you need to keep in mind. When you pay your water and wastewater bill every month, you expect to be able to turn on your faucet and have drinkable water come out of it. When you flush your toilet, you expect to never see that again, all right? And what we're talking about here is a situation where, because not of a blockage in the lateral, but because of a blockage in the main, you're now seeing what you have flushed come back and then some. All right. So I think there's just a very fundamental thought here on the part of everybody that pays their utility bill, which is that I expect to turn on my faucet and have drinkable water. I expect to flush my toilet, and I expect that to be disposed of. And when you have a situation where there's been a blockage in the city's main, that has caused the disruption of that service, I think you're asking an awful lot just to have John Geller say, well, yeah, it's your tough luck. I know you pay your bill every month.
I think
I
you have
know
to
you-
deal with those as needed.
But that's what we're saying we
That's what we're
can't
saying.
do. We've got to have a policy in place for that. That's what we're trying to do.
Let me-
We've got to establish a consistent
Go
policy.
ahead and the insurance too, I agree with you. I think a couple of you said you have insurance. I have insurance on my policy on my house, because this is not gonna pay for everything if it backs up and ruins a finished basement. So there's where you got a deductible, no doubt, on the insurance. They're gonna pay the paneling and the furniture, whatever was damaged. And what the main thing is that there's an issue where you get in, get it cleaned, cut the mildew and mold. And if you help them out that far, that's public health, that's public service.
I don't know if everybody's read this, but just let me kind of let you see what the Sydney's background is on this. Let me just read. I'm going to read a few things here and then we'll move on. But a sewer backup creates a stressful and emotional situation for homeowners, renters. In some cases, it may cause health and safety concerns as well as a significant property loss. Sorry.
Dinner ready?
A proper response to a sewer backup can greatly minimize property damage and diminish the threat of illness. The City of Sydney makes every effort to be responsive to residents' needs and concerns when a sewer backup occurs. The city has an underground utility crew whose duty is to inspect, clean, and maintain sewers on a daily basis. They are available on a 7-day, 24-hour day basis to minimize and respond to possibilities of sewer problems, which is what we have. Unfortunately, because a sewer is not a closed system, many things put into the sewer can clog the system. For example, large amounts of grease from restaurants, disposable cloths, diapers, and tree roots growing into the sewer laterals are all factors that contribute to sewer backups. Inflow and infiltration are sources of clean water intrusion into the sewer system, coming from broken or segmented sewer joints. Leaks from private property sewer laterals, foundation drains, connections, etc. can overload the sewer capacity. While the City of Sydney has adopted rules prohibiting the discharge of any substances likely to cause a sewer obstruction, perform capital projects to mitigate I&I, and tries to educate the public about the causes of sewer problems, like we were up there. You know, we've talked to restaurants and everything about dumping grease down, but yet we still have tons and tons of grease. There is no way to absolutely prevent sewer backups from occurring. For that reason, courts have found that cities generally are not liable for sewer backups and damages caused. However, the owner of the property is responsible for maintaining and cleaning the sewer lateral from the building or home to the city's sewer mains, including the connection of the sewer mains, see drawing below. The City of Sydney is responsible for the proper operation and maintenance of the public sewer system, generally located in the streets, including main sewer, manholes, pump station, and water treatment, wastewater plants. It is not the I'm going to go to the second. It is not the responsibility of the city's field crews responding to a sewer backup event to make the determination as to whether the city is liable. So this is something that will have to be going over by our crews and so forth. But to get to the meat of the policy, the terms and the conditions of the city's no-fault sewer backup reimbursement policy for those properties that experience sewer backups are as follows. For purpose of the policy, the term no fault means the city will pay to a property owner up to $500 for cleanup costs following sanitary sewer backups, irrespective of whether the city was negligent or legally liable for those damages. For the purpose of this policy, the term sewer backup means any backup of sewage from a city-owned and maintained sanitary sewer or sewer force main system. This city policy is intended to reduce health hazards by cleaning up quickly as possible, to reduce the frequency and severity of sewer backup claims, This policy will reimburse the property owner up to $500 for cleanup costs if all of the following conditions are met. And then they get into what conditions they'll pay on. The backup must have resulted from a condition in the city's sewer system or lines and not caused by backup caused by a clog or other problems in the property owner's sewer line or sewer lateral. It is not one of these situations specifically excluded by this policy. The property owner agrees to participate in the city flood abatement program. Now, this is another program that Sydney has besides this program that's making people take their downspouts and I problems and separating them from the sewer lines. So if you want this money, you got to agree to get in on this policy too. And that's the way you read that.
That's not, and not everybody has that
Not
problem.
everybody has that, and we don't have that problem. I would not even consider that. The lost or damaged personal property as a result of the sewer backup event is not covered under the policy. The property owner can either make a claim to their insurance company or file a claim with the city's liability insurer. So, and I think what the mayor's saying is, it's nice to have some kind of a policy. To just go out and then, went over this and over this, and walk away from these people that have sewage in their basement and not offer anything is only going to make an enemy for the city. And I'm telling you right now, if it does happen, they're going to try to sue you. They're going to try to do whatever they can do. And if they can show that we have some kind of neglect, or if they start getting into the EPA rules and regulations, which are becoming more and more stringent on upkeep of sewer systems, I think we could see some repercussions from this. But it's not intended to pay, like Cletus says, it's not intended to pay for everybody's damages. We got to set a limit, and we have to make it so that we can do it, but we can't just walk away from it.
Okay, John, based on if you did this $500, just like this says, okay? And you're saying if people have finished basements and they get the sewage in there, it's thousands of dollars, okay? So they're not gonna be happy with $500
But
anyway.
there's a lot of small ones. Well, first of all,
Okay.
it's got to be more than $500.
Okay.
But
they're not
first
gonna
of all,
be
you
happy with
ask the mayor about what the difference is when you walk in on a person. The mayor and I actually gave a check to a person, I think it was for like $600 or something for cleanup. It covered all their cleanup, but that person was very happy that we offered that. He was happy that we were there, and he had some kind of alternative to kind of guide this guy, and there was no repercussions from it. We had no problems from it, and the citizen was. I never heard anything on it. Did you, Mayor? No.
Okay, let me ask you this. Let's say it's 500, okay? And I have a sewer backup in my house, all right? But I got insurance, full coverage, and no deductible, okay? Do I get the $500 plus my insurance will pay me to clean it up? Do I get to make $500?
I don't know. I imagine the insurance company will say, well, did you get money for cleaning this up, or have you gotten any other kind of compensation for that?
Yeah, I would expect them to ask for actual damages, is what the insurance company would pay. And so it's whatever the cost is minus $500 is what I would expect.
Good question. In this program, you will have a form, so you would have to file and ask for the money, and you might, if you had insurance or if you didn't.
Well, how long do you wait for the $500? Because I thought the idea was you come right out there and clean it up.
Well, you do, but you've got to get that form
So with
filled
that
out,
way,
right? That
Still have
releases you
there
from
still
other,
have to be some release
to
responsibility
get the money,
to get the money.
the approval to go ahead and clean. I think you would approve and say, yes, we'll pay that,
Sure,
go get it cleaned.
as long as we're staying under the amount.
Go ahead.
This is what, this is kind of my feeling on it. We've talked about this a couple times. I do know that there's policies out there. People, they try to help your customers as much as possible. And this is one way of being able to offer a little bit of help. Whether or not you guys want to implement this or not, all I can do is give you suggestions. We can talk about other communities and what they've done. But it's ultimately, your guys' decision what you want to do. It's just as easy for me to offer something and I can walk away just as easy. But what I'm looking down the road.
No, you can't.
Well,
No,
Yeah.
no, you can't.
No, I can't. Not really. I mean, it's going to bother me. But
And I would make at least.
no more work, just more stress.
I have a question in regards to the Noah's Ark. That was our fault, wasn't it, or no? That was theirs, it was in their lateral.
No,
No,
it's in our main.
So it was our fault.
Well, it wasn't their fault because they were maintaining it, and it was.
Because we proved that we maintained that
That's what I
within a
said, we should
reasonable
pay
length
zero.
of time.
So it was in our main.
It's in our
They
main.
got back, so let's just say.
And you know how Doug just explained, you know, how where if the plug occurred here and there's about 30 or 40 more other houses, and that they're the lowest, that's the lowest spot in that addition where that problem was. Okay, so everyone flushing things down in the morning is going to back up into their because they're the lowest paying point.
But the plug was in our main.
But it was in our main,
It backed into the Noah's Ark.
and the insurance company's still going to say well,
They
they're not going to
denied
pay
it.
anything.
All right, now let's say we have another situation similar to the cost of cleanup. And you go out and something like that, and you make the call, and somebody comes out. Is that contractor going to understand, and is everybody going to understand that the city's only paying X amount of dollars is this, or is the contractor going to want us to pick up the whole bill because they don't know if this guy's going to pay or not?
What we
When
do
they're
is
done, what
we,
are they going to do if they don't pay?
this is what I would anticipate it working. I would say, you know, I can give you $1,000 help, or wherever you set the limit at, wherever you guys decide. I can give you guys $1,000, $2,000, whatever, and you can hire someone to get in here and get this cleaned up as soon as possible. But that's the most I can offer to you. But it's something, okay? It's not just running through our insurance, which I know right now what's going to happen as soon as I tell them. But it's just an offer to help.
Have you seen our insurance pick up any of them?
Not since I've been here.
They usually
I
won't.
was thinking
because you're-
Bush said that there was one where it was a lift failure, and we picked it
That
up.
was before me. That lift station had a failure, and the insurance company did do some on that.
They're not gonna find you liable if they responded reasonably, took care of the stoppage. They're not gonna win a lawsuit for $700 worth of cleanup. It's whether you want to do that or not as a community. That's just the way it is. Now, if they get a call and nobody responds, or if they're aware that there's a lateral or something sticking down in the sewer and causing problems and they don't fix it, then you're gonna probably lose.
And
Because you
we've
knew
had, that happened on, we've had that happen.
I've read cases where something similar happened with storm sewers. They cleaned out the storm sewer and then left all the debris right next to the storm sewer, and the next rain it all washed back in again, and the village was found liable for that.
Now, I just,
John?
Yeah.
When you've gone out on these in the past, do you have them get an estimate before you make the offer? Or is it just you kind of making a judgment?
well, you know,
this is gonna
the
be-
thing of it is it was kind of a judgment. When I went on this last one though, it was a total surprise to me. Because I didn't realize what all this involved, and it became a lot more. And that's why I think we need to set a limit. But when we originally sat down, you know, they said, well, first of all, they wanted everything replaced. Well, last time we had everything replaced and all this, and I said, all we can pay for is cleanup. And I made that statement. And that kind of got me in trouble a little bit, because the cleanup ended up being more than what I'd ever anticipated.
There was an important statement you made there last time that tells us at least twice that went into those people's basements.
It did. That's why in this policy, we also have to make them, if it reoccurs, they have to have a backflow preventer.
The city, an important note here, minimum response on any stoppage. Check the main sewer line. You saw the manholes, make sure, clean the obstruction. Must do it just as quickly as you can. Review the history of that line. Televise the section. I've had a policy in many of the places I worked. If you had a stoppage and you don't determine right then what caused it, the next day or so, TV it to find out. Have a reason so that you know why that. And then evaluate the need for a backflow valve. Those are musts whether you ever pay anybody's cleanup. You've got to do that much.
But it's nice to have this in some kind of a policy. But I'm going to tell you, I'll be quite honest with you. And we talked about the range of help. Do nothing, what Doug just talked about, clean obstruction, TV. Where do we stop? You know, where does it, you know, do we pay for it all? You know, pay for cleanup and all repairs. I mean, all communities have different levels, but I'm going to tell you the majority of them, because we've kind of talked about all this stuff without going through the slides. I'm just going to run through these, but most of the communities around here don't have any kind of a policy, and it's kind of one of these things where, you know, and I don't understand quite why, but let's keep it quiet. You know, I got this little fund over here. Mayor said that I can use this little fund, but I'm not going to talk too much about it. And I can offer some assistance if I want to. And usually it's up to the utility director. But Granville has no policy, but we'll help with sewer backups up to $5,000. That's what I was told but then when I talked to the city, he told me that they never paid that, but when I talked to the superintendent said, oh yeah, we have. In process of developing a sewer backup policy similar to Sydney, that's Granville. Newark, no policy. Budgets money for cleanup, tries to stay under $1,000 per incidence. This is per their utilities director, but they do have a fund.
They do it.
They do it. They do it. Utica has no policy, but has paid for cleanup and repairs in the past. Hebron, no policy, but all claims go to their insurance company. But yet, that's their policy, but they've only had like one incident in the last 3 or 4 years, I think. But, you know, so everybody's a little different. It's just a matter of where we want to be. Okay. And that's a decision. I just need to know, do you want a policy? Do you not want a policy? And this may be more of an administrative call. You know, I mean, when you go to make payouts, it becomes a council call. So you guys have to agree to this policy. So if you're going to offer payout, but this is, I guess, one of these things where the council and the mayor is going to have to work together to decide where you want to be. Well, what do you guys want to do? And that's what I'm interjecting, and I'm hoping that's what this meeting's all about, is where do we want to be at?
I mean, whether council wanted it or not, if the money was put in there in your general, in your budget, you wouldn't need anybody's approval. You could just pay the claims as needed.
That's what we did in the past, but I want to make sure that's why Dave's here.
I mean, but by all rights, if the money comes in, if you put money in his budget to pay for it, then you don't need council's approval. It's a policy that you and him would set, and you and John would decide who gets paid and how much.
No, I'm in favor of having something in writing.
I think it should be.
Well, I'm not saying.
My main thing is that as long as we're talking about the main and not their lateral was plugged up, because
we never have done
example
that.
is something said something that you had a blockage that backed up into your basement. You didn't go to the city of Newark to pay for the blockage because you knew it was your lateral, that you had to get the roots cleaned out. That's different, and I think that's what we're talking, that if it's the main that caused the water going back up in there, then I say, hey, then let's do something, let's have a policy about it.
And that's
So
one of the
people-
first things that's determined. Because the first thing you gotta find out is,
Right.
is there a plug in the main? Because if there is, it may be this house now, but depending on the elevation of the area, it may be the next house in 10 minutes.
Right.
Okay, so the first thing that's done is there a blockage in the main? And that's why you go downstream and you lift the manhole and you see, is it flow? If it's flowing in the main, well, then you know the blockage isn't in the main. You know the blockage is in the lateral. And then we don't assist them.
We get, just to let you know, I mean, I probably get a couple calls a week on that, you know, where someone's, oh, my drain's running slow. So, okay. And I always tell everyone, call us first, you know, because if it's our problem, there's no use having a plumber out there clean your lateral when we can take care of it for you.
And you want to know right away.
And we want to know right away. So, I mean, we get these, like I say, I bet you I get 2 of these calls every week. The guys go out, they call me back, John, main out front's flowing very good. It's their responsibility. I call them back. It's your responsibility. So that's, I mean, we do this all the time.
Okay, as a committee of two, one of the possibilities of getting you to write up a policy and to get it to the whole council as soon as possible so we can look at it, give us a little bit of time. You know, I'd like to have seen this before today. And
I emailed.
I was gonna say, this Sydney policy was emailed to everyone.
Friday, right?
okay.
Yeah, I tell you, you know, I was misunderstanding, but I totally agree with you 100%. And I can say this. What I was saying was based on prior people. But since you've been here, John, I hate to say it. No, I don't. Things have changed. And I trust you. I just didn't want us to throw something out there that would cause people to sue us because they will. And they'll sue no matter what, you know. But if they walk down your sidewalk, stub their toe, they're suing you.
But I think too, it should be something, please, that helps John. And when he goes to talk to people, or, you know, you can say, hey, we're sorry, but it is in your lateral. It's our sewer, our main is running good. Or, hey, yeah, our main did screw up, you know, we'll help you out in this way.
Can you start putting together a policy and then
And I'll kind of try to guide it towards what.
and decide whether yes or no?
Yeah, one thing you might want to consider is just use the Sydney policy to start with as a point of departure, and then see how you'd like to modify that, save John a lot of work, and it's, you know, from the legal point of view, the way it's
John work. Take a shorter nap.
Yeah, there we go.
I have a question. I mean, I just wanted to say, if we're writing a policy, I'd like to see it be specific enough so that we don't appear arbitrary, because I think that's where open us up for lawsuits. Because if John says, well, you know, Dick, we're gonna pay $1,000 on yours, and that's his whole bill, and yours is $1,200, we say no, but we haven't really set a cap on that. We need to be a cap. And I think that also we might want to think about having a cap on the fund for the year, because this could, I heard you say we have a 50-year-old system. This could start to be something we're going to see more and more of. And if we say, this is it, this is what we have to invest in that will be another way to protect ourselves.
So your line plugged up.
And I'm past,
And
I
I'm
know,
in
but
December, and I'm tough luck, but if it happens in January, I'm
yes, that's exactly how I see it.
I don't see you, of course.
I think that whatever we say, we've got to put it in a policy.
Now let me ask you this: do you
I was gonna say,
want to include the lateral in the street deal too, where you get specific about that, or you want to ignore that altogether?
If that lateral goes to the street, I'm sorry, but I feel that lateral is the lateral. I mean, if it's like they say, that maybe a tree is right there at the edge of their property, and those roots have went out towards that and caused this thing to, hey, and they can't break through, or it's broken pipes.
I don't want them digging in the street.
I don't know.
That's my cousin Bubba.
So what are we saying?
John, let me just ask you this question. To Dick's point. If there's a problem in the lateral and it is on the city's side of the right of way, wouldn't, even though the customer is footing the bill, wouldn't we still put eyes on what they're doing?
Street department would be
To
involved.
ensure that they're not just willy-nilly tearing things up and throwing junk down in the fill around it and all that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just as we do on the water side, where we supervise customers paying for taps and that process, we would still do that if there was a lateral problem. I mean, it's not as though customer just digging in the street and we're not knowing about it. We would still have eyes on what they're doing.
We would have to.
But you might want to have a list of approved contractors, then make them use one of those, and if somebody's not approved, make them, give them a chance to apply to become approved.
Just like you said, you was mentioned that when you tap the sewer, it used to be in Heath, you had to use the approved list to tap the sewer.
It still is.
It's so that, okay, do you have if someone's repairing their lateral, do they have to use it?
They have to.
So, okay. So
So
you,
we
you have a
we
list of people that
essentially
are
we
approved
have-
or not approved.
Oh, okay.
To repair the lateral,
To repair.
they take a test.
Okay.
We have a testing system, and they pay a fee to take the test, and then you are able to attack the city sewer system.
So we're already doing that.
We're doing that.
So
But
we do-
when it comes to replacing the road, when you're out in the middle of the road, I don't know how many of those contractors, someone's gonna have to be there and make sure that that road's put back right.
Don't you have a street opening permit? Do they have to?
Do you have a right-of-way permit to work in this city right-of-way?
Not that I know of.
Most cities have a, yeah,
Most of them do.
for anybody with the city to open a hole in the street, you have to have a permit. That way you know what's going on, why they're opening the.
I don't think there is.
Not that I know. I've never seen one.
I'll put my Norc hat on. I mean, Norc has old sewers, and we have people every week, practically, getting out into the street to fix a sewer main or lateral, not a main, a lateral. Okay, but I shouldn't say every week. I mean, some weeks you don't have anything. I have 2 or 3 or something like that.
So Norks is experiencing this a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you've got maybe 100-year-old sewer system clay
Mhm.
laterals and stuff like that, and everything. But it's not that common. I mean, normally when someone has a problem, and I say, where the tap is, stuff like that, they usually find it before they ever get to the road. Okay. Every so often under the sidewalk, every so often maybe right at the curb line or the edge of pavement. But generally speaking, from the main to that was put in by the general contractor years ago or the developer or whatever, that's usually pretty good. And it's usually because it's had years and years of compaction on top of it, not whereas others, So usually there's not much problem. Every once in a while though, like you said, old clay line or something like that will just total failure and you'll have to go all the way to the main. And sorry about your luck, but you got to do it. And most of them, the homeowner does not repair them. They hire the normal contractors around town that are all excavators and like that, and they're the people that are putting in subdivisions, putting in, sewer laterals all the time and stuff. So it's not like you got, Joe going down here to Nation's Rent getting a backhoe and going, oh, the weekend I'm going to dig a street. So, every once in a while you have one of them go in their yard. But not very often.
Do you have an open road permit?
Yeah, we have when you get out in the public right of way, you have to get a right of way permit and tell us what you're doing and everything. And we send guys out to look at it and stuff. Sometimes they do an excellent job. Most of the time we make them put like maybe 7 or 8 inches of concrete on top and then fill with asphalt.
Do you have guidelines on that? Do you have guidelines on when they open the road?
Yeah, we have standard drawing for what it's supposed to look like, your backfill material, whether you put 57s around the pipe, 304, the whole.
Now, I'm not familiar with the streets, so I don't know whether we have anything like that here that exists. So
you probably do. I mean, John Grove probably knows.
There's probably
they're not going to just go out there and say, oh yeah, I'm going out here, on the weekend and do it. You just don't do that. And as you said, Heath has very few sewers in the road. So if you probably did a list of the people and the houses and the roads that might happen on, it's probably very few that we never have to even worry about this concession. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
so what are you
it's not
saying?
like Norc where
We
there's
don't need
thousands.
it, or we do need it?
I don't think you need it. I think you just let the people take care of it. And then, I mean, it's hard to say, but there's people all the time that in Norc, at least the low income people can go to community development and get a interest loan, or get it put on their property taxes to pay for stuff like that. If they have to pay $10,000-$15,000 to repair their lateral, the house might only hardly be worth that, but they can go up there and get it.
What
and it goes on their taxes, and then when they sell their house,
what happens if somebody can't pay that? What happens?
They can't fix it. They
on their taxes. So does the city make them pay it, no matter? I mean, borrow it or what?
Yeah, however they have to get it, borrow it from somebody, whatever. Move out of the house.
It goes on their taxes and they pay it out yearly.
Kind of like we do with.
Like I said, they go to
People don't pay their
community
water.
development, get a loan, or they go to the bank, get a loan, whatever they have to do. Yeah, there's people all the time that.
I mean, I'm just hoping that we have that in place in the city here that follows through with all that stuff that you're talking about. I mean, I think that's what we
Do
need.
you have a feel for what that cost would be when they have to go out the street?
It just all depends on the street. I mean, we have a kid like some of the major streets. You really don't want them to get out into it and stuff like that.
Traffic control.
And everything, but sometimes they have to. I mean, it's just we had one on Mount Vernon Road once, and they had to get out into the street and everything, close off a lane, and the whole 9 yards and stuff, and
Costs quite a bit of money.
and everything, and it was not cheap. I mean, but they wanted to keep sewers, running out of their house, I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do,
Okay, let me kind of wrap things up with this. First of all, I just want you guys to know that, the reason why I'm introducing this stuff is because I feel like it's part of my job. I'm letting you guys know that these instances occur, and we need to have either a plan or not have a plan or whatever we decide. So, however you want me to proceed with this, that's the way I'll proceed. So, I mean, if we don't want to think about the lateral type, in the road, then you just want me to set a policy for just being able to offer something, or if you don't, however you guys think you want me to.
I personally think we need to address it. I mean, you can't blame them if you don't tell them. That's right.
Would you be able to provide to us when you present the policy with like maybe the last 3 years of each claim and how much it was, so that we can look at what the averages were?
I got it.
What he's got,
Oh, okay.
he said the average,
Yeah.
without the big one was, with the big one.
With the big one, it was 4,000. Without, it's like a little over $1,000 a year.
So for the last 4 years.
It's the last 4 years
Okay, $1,000 a year, average per incident or
per year.
per year? Okay.
That was what the
Without
total
the
was
big-
for the year,
But we had this big one and
I
it
know.
bumped it up.
to 4,000, yeah.
Well, that's why I was interested in knowing per incident, because if we're looking at, because we talked about 500 not being enough, but maybe 500 is enough, if,
Well, John mentioned the one check, and he's right, it was somewhere in 600, it was 600 something.
So I think.
That's why I think $1,000 would be a good.
At least get the mess.
Because it's up to, it's not just.
That's what it was.
Right.
Yeah, and that was exactly what it was. Get the
I mean, the
message.
cleanup may be $500, $600, but what this mold issue that Doug talks about is they send these people to school now. And if you can see where the water comes up so far on the drywall, then you have to take off so much above that in order to stop the mildew or whatever. There's rules and regulations for all that. And then they have to have different equipment in there to kind of get rid of the moisture. And I mean, it gets into.
John, one thing
That just happens with a wet basement too, it doesn't have to be sewage.
yes,
I'm sorry.
I think that you have to have somewhere in there that they do take the money, that they get the cleanup and get it quickly, and then you have proof that they've cleaned it up, then you give them the money.
That's right.
Yes.
They can't.
So you're not gonna
Right,
give them more.
we're
than
just not gonna
$1,000.
give them the money.
The cleanup has to occur,
Yeah.
because we're saying that the most important reason you're doing that is a health reason.
Yeah, and I didn't see that in the Sydney policy, but I think that'd be a good thing to add.
So,
Let me ask you this then, since you're talking about not getting the money and stuff. Somebody that's, doesn't have any money, has a house with a basement, finished basement, gets sewage back up, and it, let's say it was because of the main, okay? Sewage back up in there. They call, you come out, yeah, the main's blocked, and you say you pay up to $1,000 for initial cleanup, okay? They call ASAP or something like that, okay? Anything. Now, they say, I don't have any money, but the city's gonna give me $1,000, okay? And the ASAP says, well, they come out and says, well, based on your thing, it's a $5,000 job, okay? Now,
But
will ASAP come out and do $1,000 worth of, and then quit? Will they do I mean, how do they get paid? Do they not come out, because of that? I mean, essentially what you're saying is their fault, their problem.
It may
okay?
cost them more to clean it up, but at least the city's making an offer, that we're putting our foot forward to help them. We can't pay for everything, I mean, we've determined that. But at least we have a policy and we're making an offer that we can help with this much. We're not leaving them totally.
And the biggest thing of
And the majority of them are under $1,000. I mean, the majority of the ones we've had, other than this big one, are under $1,000.
and that,
So you would be paying for the majority.
I don't wanna see us have another $13,000 one. If there's a $13,000 one, $1,000, good luck.
Well, they should have had the insurance to cover the rest of it, their own insurance.
They did.
I'm all right.
And they should have had that.
Okay, anything else to wrap up?
And that has to be put in there too.
Anything else?
So, John, what I'm hearing is, let's use the Sydney policy as the model. I don't know that we've gotten any consensus on the flood abatement program, maybe we tackle that separately or something.
We don't do the flood abatement.
But let's use this Sydney policy as the model. If you want to get it specific to the city of Heath,
Mhm.
and then we'll go from there.
That sounds good. Just,
One question for law director. Can you check to see if we do have, like, the insurance and the claim, if it's $1,000 or not?
deductible.
You know, what the deductible, and if we had this policy at 1,000, and so we go out and we say we're gonna pay 1,000 to clean it up, and then later they sue us, and we have the $1,000 deductible we gotta pay, does that 1,000 go towards that, or do we have to pay the 1,000 plus the 1,000 to the insurance company? You know what I'm saying?
I can get a look at the policy and find out.
See what that kind of, what our,
Give Keith a call tomorrow.
Heath would be the one.
Keith might know all that stuff, or whatever. Anything. You know, I'm just saying, I don't wanna pay twice, for you know, if they're gonna sue anyway. You know, cost 1,000, I want to cost 2,000.
I can't remember Sydney's address.
7-Eleven, meeting adjourned.
7-Eleven sounds like a
I don't know,
store.
if you get the 1,000, you sign, you who wants to sue? You can't do that. Good, wonderful. Anyone going to Bob Evans? Are you buying us dinner tonight?
No, I don't know.
Are you going?
Yes, I'm going.
I actually sent my wife a text, she said, Bob Evans tonight, anything see lunch? She said, I said, I was calling when we were done here, and stuff, so, looks like I'm headed that place. Oh, is it?
I remember the days where the township left.
I got a sure why not. I gotta figure, I have a Bob Evans to get it.
County, and we.
I was gonna get mine, so that's all right. What are you
That would have been my older brother. I could have been Gary. I used to know him. A long time ago.
Yeah.
They had that, big box shirt. Because for a long time, I said articles and I ran they quit. That's a great picture.
Yeah, and then now.
So James Evans.
I just had
I was all in Minneapolis.
Thank you for.